Hey guys, I'm back again for another one of these videos. The topic I'm going to cover today is my journey as a writer and webcomic artist. This topic was requested by Ken I hope I'm pronouncing your username right. Sorry if I got that wrong. And I thought it would be interesting because lately I've been working on revamping an older story of mine from when I was like 12 or 13. I can't really remember a time when I didn't have characters. The first I can remember was this character that I had when I was, I think, 5 and 6, named the Princess. She was like this wolf, dragon, unicorn thing. She was basically my persona, but I didn't know what a persona was on account of being 5 years old. And I say characters and not stories because for a long time these were just things I like to think about. I would think about scenarios with these characters, like meeting other characters from stories or movies that I liked. And that would be just a thing that I would do, when I was bored. I'd think about that. And it was like that for, most of my childhood. As time went on, I got more complex with these things. And even though, from a very young age, I also wanted to write because both of my parents are writers. They both write. My mom mostly writes novels. My dad mostly writes poetry. That was something I always kind of wanted to do, but I didn't really think of those things as stories. I just thought of them as, fun things to think about. They were, mostly about animal characters, mostly, animals or furries. Pretty much all high fantasy, because if there's one thing about me that hasn't changed, it's that I am... Fuck it, I'm not monetized. I am a slut for high fantasy. But over time, they became more structured and less things that I played around with, and more things that I was seriously trying to develop. The recording I'm doing now is actually based on one, again, that I had when I was, I think, 11 or 12, with these hyena-like creatures. I was thinking about, and I was like, there were some interesting concepts in this. Let's see what I can do with it now, and I'm having a good time with that. Look for it as a comic in 10 years, because I got a bunch of other stuff to do first. Sorry, guys. Comics is slow. But yeah, early on, I didn't actually think I wanted to be an artist. I thought I wanted to be a writer. I thought I wanted to write novels, which, I mean, I am working on, a few novels now, but it's very much like a hobby to recharge and not my main goal, which is always going to be webcomics. I didn't start wanting to make comics until I was in my preteens, and I got into, manga. Yes, I was a weeaboo. Were we not all weeaboos? And I made a few attempts at comics. I always was kind of into webcomics, but it took me a while to realize, oh, that's what I want to do. I've been into webcomics since about 2009, and there was a period in my early webcomic reading days where I just put everything in my mouth, just everything right in my mouth. Gaming webcomics, fuck it. I read Control Alt Delete. Ironically, I was 12, man. Leave me alone. Anyway. But it took me a while to realize I wanted to do webcomics. I didn't really realize that comics were my passion until I started making a comic. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is actually what I want to dedicate my whole life to, like 4 pages into Two-Faced. 4 pages into Two-Faced, I was like, actually, screw everything else. I do webcomics now. I did attempt, the first digital comic I attempted, because I would do traditional comics for a while. The first digital comic I attempted, I did about 2 pages of. It was with this one really, 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 really edgy furry story. I was about 13, and it was about she was this hybrid. There are these winged fox species, and there was this wolf species, and she was a hybrid between 2 of them. So she was outcast or whatever, and it was about her rise to power in a very Warrior Cats Rise of Scourge kind of thing. But I didn't have a DeviantArt then, so I didn't post it online. So I lost steam pretty quickly, and thank God for that, because if I had made that, it would have been bad. It would have been so bad. It was so edgy. You don't even know. Maybe I'll tell you about it sometime. It's a ride, I tell you what. But, around that time I was also into Warriors. Actually, one of the first things I posted online, which was, I think, in 2010 or 2011, was my Warrior Cats fanfic, which I I have a rewrite of it going right now on my fanfic account still, but it hasn't updated in a very long time, and it updates very sporadically because every other prose thing I'm writing is like it's got werewolves in it. And we'll get to werewolves in a second. Writing for me, it's always been about things that I think are like neat and fun for me to think about. And I always, if I'm in public and I have to wait somewhere, even if I'm supposed to be paying attention in class, I will frequently be thinking about that stuff. So it's usually, concepts that I think are fun. And I think part of maturing as a writer is figuring out what exactly you think is fun to write and draw about. Like, let me talk about my first comic again. Two-Faced, my first comic about cats. I got bored with it. I got bored with it about halfway through. Because it didn't have enough concepts that I thought were interesting. I was kind of writing it based on, other animal comics at the time, which are great and I love to read. But as it turns out, a lot of times I don't love to write. And then there's another factor. If you're doing webcomics or like any kind of visual medium, you have to think about both what you like to write about and what you like to draw. And as it turns out, I wasn't very interested in drawing cats. I like to draw cats. They're very easy for me to draw, and I think that's why I got pretty bored with drawing cats. I'm more interested in drawing humanoid creatures, especially, with more advanced societies, because, I don't necessarily like drawing buildings and cityscapes, but they're more interesting to me than drawing, the same forest over and over. With Fragile, one of the things I really wanted to push was good backgrounds, and I've come to really enjoy drawing backgrounds. The backgrounds in my first comic were not so good. I can actually point to a specific thing, a specific piece of media that really helped me on my journey as a writer and an artist, and that is the book My Name is Asher Lev by, oh God, I'm about to mispronounce his name so bad, Chaim Potok? I butchered that probably. I am a bad Jew. Anyway, the thesis of that book is you have to make the art you are afraid to make, because the main character, Asher Lev, has a painting that he wants to make that is kind of blasphemous. And he has to, come to terms with, okay, I have to make this thing. I have to be honest with my art. I have to make this painting that's going to make everybody in my life hate me. And I was just like, damn, you're right, Asher Lev. You got to make the paintings and art that you are scared of. So, I stopped shying away from topics I was afraid to write about, like gender identity, sexuality, emotionally unhealthy relationships, mental illness too. I try not to take things out of the story just because I am afraid to write them. Although, obviously, if it's something that's sensitive, you need to do your research, and I always try to do my research and write things respectfully in that regard. Another bit of writing advice that I've seen is you need to make your stories self-indulgent, and that's what I try to do now. I try to make my stories self-indulgent, and it's worked. You have a lot more passion for something if it's something that ticks all your boxes. If you follow me on Twitter, I don't shut up about my werewolf universe that I have going on, Consumptionverse, because it ticks all my boxes. I love me some werewolves. It's got werewolves. It's got political drama. It's got relationship drama. It's got horny on Maine. So I never stop thinking about it or shut up about it. And that's, I think, what, one wants to go for when you're writing. You want to have a story that you don't stop thinking about and you don't want to stop thinking about because, you want to have stories that you love and treasure. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say on this topic. You should check out my webcomic, Fragile. And if you like that, consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can get early pages and bonus content and all that junk. Okay, see y'all next time. And remember, if you have any topics you want me to cover, leave them in the comments, and I might give it a shot.